Hi, everybody, and welcome back to On the Roof. Today we have with us another wonderful guest, Cassandra Rose. And Cassandra is a women's sacred sexuality coach and a women's empowerment coach. So without further ado, how are you, Cassandra?
Hi, Scott. I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for having me on today.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So let's find out a little bit about you. What is a woman's sacred sexuality coach? Like, what do what is that?
Yeah. Well, I specialize in helping women find their core, find their inner fire, and bring them back inherently to who they are as human beings and as women and sexual creatures on this planet. Now, we all are sexual creatures on this planet. I just specifically help women come back into their sensual nature and their sovereignty and their sexual liberation. So I help them we start out with I do a lot of breath work with the women, a lot of guided meditations. We do a lot of screaming and crying throughout this coaching. And then inherently, once we work through all of these blocks that all of us as humans have kind of brought on or taken on in our lives throughout just living, once we work through the pains and the anguishes and the stories and the negative belief patterns, then we find ourselves into our humanness and who we are as humans in our natural habitat, which are sensual beings. So once we move through all those blocks, women start to feel a little bit more alive. They're able to breathe a little bit more. The wind feels orgasmic on their skin. And with all of that, healing becomes a more pleasurable state of being so that women and all beings can just live their lives in pure bliss and happiness and let go of all the stories that hold us down and the belief patterns that keep us stagnant.
Well, I mean, your description there kind of sounds almost storybook-like. Seriously.
Absolutely, most things do.
Right. But now somebody that's coming to you, are they feeling a deficiency in that aspect of their life where their sensuality or their sexuality feels like it's deprived, or do they maybe not even realize that?
Yeah, I mean, empowerment and sovereignty and liberation for women right now are kind of key tagline words, right? With the whole Me Too movement and the awakening of the divine feminine. So we're seeing a lot of this everywhere. So women might not realize that that's why they're coming in, but there is this pull for women to find their happiness. So women might come to me and the biggest thing I hear is, I don't want to have sex with my partner, or I don't have the energy or even the interest in masturbating, or, flowers don't smell pretty to me anymore. I'm just depressed. And what we do is we just take that and work through session by session. How do we get that woman back into enjoying the smell of flowers, or excited about her own body, or excited about her partner? It always comes down to some kind of belief system that we've gained along the way, or where maybe I'm not too good, or I'm not deserving, or I'm not worthy, and just kind of finding where those stories started and working through them with guided meditations and breath work. And then throughout those processes, you come back into your pleasure center. You come back into the ability of finding that craving sensuality that you had for your partner, or, enjoying masturbating or self-pleasuring. When other things are going on in your life, those are definitely the last things on majority of women's mind and majority of humans' mind.
And are you saying that it shouldn't be in the back burner, that you should bring that to the forefront?
Yes, absolutely. Pleasure is healing. Our blissful nature is healing. When we are happy and we're in bliss, things in life go well. To say that pleasure is not healing or anything thereof is...
No, but you're not speaking of pleasure. You're speaking of sexual pleasure.
not just sexual pleasure, but sexual pleasure, yes, absolutely, but that radiates into everything else. When you engage and ignite your sexual centers, then everything else becomes blissful and pleasurable. Then eating a fruit can be orgasmic. Making dinner could be orgasmic. A smell could be orgasmic. A touch could be orgasmic. So orgasm, I want people to understand that orgasm is not just sexual. Pleasure is not just sexual. But that as a society, that's where we have, I feel like that's where we have kind of swayed off the path. Is as soon as you hear pleasure or bliss or orgasm, it's sexual. And then all the negative connotations come up with, we can get into that if you want.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get into that.
The negative beliefs of sex, right? Just
Right.
like the sex is evil, or the devil created sex, or we shouldn't be pleasured, or we shouldn't be in pleasure because that is dancing in the devil's playground, or, all of these, in my belief system, lies that we've been told.
And you feel so in some way, were you conditioned by this way of thinking?
Oh yeah, I mean, I grew up in the churches. I didn't believe most of it. It wasn't for me specifically. Not saying that it's not for everybody, but it's not for me specifically. And then as a young girl, I did masturbate at a young age, and I didn't find anything wrong with it. It made me happy. It made my body come alive. I felt more in my body and more alive when I was experiencing pleasure. The wind would go by and touch my skin, and I would feel a certain kind of orgasm from that. So when somebody was to tell me that sex was bad, and I did have that belief system for quite some time. I didn't lose my virginity until I was 19 because I felt like pleasure was bad, sex was bad. I saw a lot of my friends having sex at a young age, and they were uneducated, as most of us are here in America. And so, watching them have sex at young age and not know what they were doing, I did see the negative things that can happen from an uneducated mindset of sexual engagement. And then I learned just from observation and teaching myself and taking courses and being sexual myself that there's nothing wrong with sex. There's nothing wrong with sexual pleasure. Education needs to happen behind it. And that's where we lack as a country, is we don't have proper education around sex and sexual behavior.
So, as a woman now, based on your personal experience, where do you think some change should occur?
I think as a whole, the country needs to really take sexual education and bring it into the school system starting at a young age, and not just something that we talk about for 30 minutes on one day in middle school, separating sexes. I think it needs to start at age 8 and age appropriate, like just start letting them know when their bodies start changing, what's actually happening, what's occurring, and keep it repetitive. Let's talk about it at a young age. Let's talk about it at 8. Let's talk about it at 12. Let's talk about it at 13, 14, 15, all throughout elementary school, middle school, and high school. In other countries, they're very open about all kinds of sexual engagements. They're very explicit at a young age of, monogamous relating, open relating, polyamory relating, lesbian, gay men, just they're open. They teach kids, and in our country we just shut it down. And I think that that's where the problem is because everybody enjoys sex. Everybody's going to do sex. So let's talk about it. Let's normalize it. Let's actually make it a conversation that's talked about, just like math. I think when we put the stipulation on it and we fear it, then that's when all the negative connotations start arising, and when sex and sexual behavior can turn dark.
Yeah, listen, I couldn't agree more, but we all know that kids are kids, and they don't understand. At a certain age, you can't really understand responsibility. And here might be the most responsible behavior, that you can engage in as a kid. And if you're not ready for that, the consequences
are huge. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're not doing a good job right now. Maybe we start with offering a real sex ed conversation or class for parents. Once you enroll your kids in school,
like, hey,
you got to take sex ed because you guys got to talk to your kids about sex. You know,
Yeah.
it's like the conversation needs to happen somewhere. That's the problem, is the conversation has never actually started where it needed to start.
Yeah. Religion has a lot to do with that. And I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon. I don't know if they're necessarily going to switch course.
Yeah.
If you can pull that off, you're going to be big. If you can do that, wow.
Hey, if I could be the woman to do that, I'm going to do that.
Well, yes, good luck.
I don't know if I want to take on the Vatican or the churches, but you know.
Yeah, I know. I'm not a big fan myself, but yeah. In your life, how has it liberated you? Like you come into terms like as coming from your conditioning to evolve to who you are now. How has that one aspect of your life impacted the other aspects of your life as far as empowering you as a woman?
Wow, I'm able to listen to my body, you know, like, and get clear signs from my body and from my yoni, you know, like if there's a man or a woman that's wanting to date me or I'm wanting to date, I listen to my body. If my body's a no, then it's a no. Even if, you know, like this person is gorgeous and I want to connect with this person or I want to get to know this person, if my body tells me no, then that's a no.
But how do you
So
know
the
your body's telling you yes or no?
Because through the work, you start to really listen to your body. So it's not just like sexual empowerment, but it's body empowerment. Our body shows us all kinds of signs. Like for women, okay, for sexual engagement, if we're not really ready to have sex, we're going to be dry down there. Or we're going to start to have emotions in our heart center or in our stomach. And, you know,
And,
and a lot
and
of
that
times,
can't be like written off to circumstance. Like that's something that you at where you are in your evolvement, you would have
yeah,
to identify that as something to pay direct attention to.
absolutely. Body awareness. You know, I'll be a little blunt if I can, and a little
Be as blunt as you want.
yeah, you know, I had a partner when I was living in the Bay Area, and I had known this person for a very long time, and we decided to start dating. And as soon as we started having sex, you know, things started happening in my body. I started getting yeast infections, and I started, you know, just drying up when I was around him, or I started getting really nervous or anxious. And even though, like, I wanted to be with that person, my body was a big no. And then, you know, a couple months later, we realized that we were not good for each other.
Just taking the sexuality part out of it, does that come down to sometimes just really being true, being being able to trust yourself, being able to be true to who you really are, with despite however you were conditioned. If you're doing the work to peel through all of that and to get down to your core and say, this is really who I am, and those people who accept that, that's where my circle is, and those people that don't are going to be outside the perimeter.
Yeah, maybe not outside the perimeter, but if you look at it as like a castle, you know, you have your people who are in your castle, and sometimes there's people that just only make it up to the gate. They don't get to come in.
Woo! Wow. Well said. Yeah. Yeah. But my point in asking that is, it like, I understand like that sexuality is a part of that, is, and a big part of defining yourself in your truth,
Yeah.
right? What's acceptable. And a lot of that is already been altered due to the conditioning that we
Right.
all get conditioned at in some way.
Societal conditioning,
All of it.
conditioning from family. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
But on top of that, though, I mean, just that you can be honest, really gut wrenching honest to who you are and who you want to be. A lot of people are just not up to speed with that, because
Right.
even if they might respect where you're at, it's just uncomfortable for them because they haven't done that work to find their own truth. And there's that awkward thing in between that, that they don't
Absolutely.
even, they recognize the awkwardness, but they don't understand it. Where
What the
you will
awkwardness
understand it.
is.
You'll know I did work. And if you haven't done
Yeah.
this work, you don't know where I'm at.
Yeah. I mean, 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I too was that awkward person. Like, I want to believe what you're saying. I want to be where you're at, but I have too many stories, or I have too much pain.
So
I don't know. Am I ever going to be there? Like, yeah, I was that person where it felt awkward and foreign. Absolutely. I was that person. That's why I'm passionate about helping people now, because I've been there.
Yeah. So this journey right now, like this empowerment that you're on now, is a result of a focused path for, like, what'd you say, 3-4 years?
it's been my whole life, really. I've been on a journey of self-healing my whole life. I've suffered a lot of traumas in my life, near death situations, rape, all kinds of things. And so
Are you
through
open to
my,
talk about that kind of stuff?
yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
like why don't you share it, like some like the dark stuff that has kind of turned your
Absolutely.
life in a negative way, I would say. Yes.
Yeah, at the age of 3, I was a burn victim in a forest fire, but not a forest fire, a campfire, and I was burned on a third of my body, and I basically was raised in a burn clinic unit in Utah from the age of 3 to 13. I would
10
visit
years
there.
in a burn clinic.
Yeah, I mean, not full on, not full on. I spent probably, a third of each year at the burn clinic. But during that time, I was also, on morphine for pain management at a very young age, which down the line gave me a healthy recreational drug addiction.
Mm.
I had abandonment issues from my father, who left at the age of 3, and I worked through addiction, abandonment. I was raped when I was 24, and so I've had this negative path always laid before me, but I've also been blessed with, as soon as that negative instance occurred, there's always been answers. So, fully, this has been my life. Like, something happens and I have to go through it, or a lot of death in my life. I've had so many people die in my life. Recently,
Mm.
one of my best friends was just murdered. So that's a big trauma that
Sorry.
I've been dealing with. But it's all things that get me to where I am today, and to be able to help people with multiple different traumas or stories or negative belief patterns. The abandonment and the not feeling worthy enough or not deserving of love, or any kind of traumas, or the loss of a loved one, all the dark things, all the shadow things that life just happens. Life just brings to us. You can either sit with them and continue to build this shell around you and then become numb yourself, or you can do some really gentle, nice work to help break through those shells and still continue to experience life in a pleasurable, blissful way. There's layers to life, and we can either keep them on or we can take them off.
Cassandra, that you just put a lot out there. That no, I mean that's a
I'm an
lot.
open book.
No, but okay. I mean, yeah, obviously you put but what you put out there is not just like that's a lot of trauma. That's some really, really, real heavy stuff, and some of it really young. So you carried that for a long time. Would you say that? Would you describe yourself as having PTSD?
I would say in the past I have, but I've done my work. I've put myself through trauma trainings.
Mm-hmm.
I've put myself through breathwork trainings, through shamanic trainings, through therapy, through anything that I need to in order to work past all of the traumas that I've endured and incurred. Like, absolutely, I had PTSD. Somebody would scream or a man would touch me, and I would shiver, or I would freak out. And it was up to me at one point to continue living like that, or to take the steps necessary in order to move through that.
You
And
know,
I always chose to take the steps and move through it.
wow, good for you. See, I often think it's misperceived what PTSD actually is, and like here in New York, there's a certain I know a lot of people that I've spoken with about this, and in certain circles, there's a belief that if you weren't down at the towers during 9/11, or if you weren't in Vietnam, or if you're not a cop and had your partner shot right in front of you, then you really don't know what PTSD is. Now, not to begrudge them on what they have experienced,
Yeah.
but I've come to learn that PTSD could be as mild as maybe being scolded as a kid and interpreting it in a certain way. But when you don't process that and get like I think what you said, which made me think of this right away, and the difference between you and other people who have haven't come as far nor have gone through as much as you is simply a matter of you doing the work and them not doing the work. I mean, it's a matter of these childhood issues, no matter, because I think it's all based on childhood. You know, it's my own amateur assessment. You know,
No, I
but
agree with
we either
you.
deal with it and address them, or we don't. And an unaddressed issue is an unaddressed issue. Not saying that you can't succeed and get on with life, but that issue is still unaddressed. And sometimes that, like, that word abandonment comes up, and we don't even realize that we're looking at something that way. And then you get on in your years, and the same issue just keeps following you.
Yeah. Well, here, I'll give you a perfect example. Abandonment by father. Okay. That tells me at a young age that I'm not worthy of love and that I'm not deserving of love. So what do? I go throughout my life and I engage in these partnerships that are low level, that are shadow. They're all negative partnerships. They're all, people that I should never be with. And then I create a scenario to where they leave me so that I can solidify my story of I'm not worthy and you're going to leave me. Or I can do the work and realize that I am worthy and that I am deserving of love. And then the next partner that comes in, I'm not going to create a story to push them away to prove that I'm not worthy. I'm going to trust that I'm worthy and create a story and a scenario to where they stay. We don't think about these little things. These
Well, you know why? We don't know
things.
about them. We don't know. You don't know what you're doing.
Right.
Well, you're creating that whole elaborate, very elaborate, by the way, scenario. You have no idea what you're doing.
Right.
What you're really
No
doing
idea.
is you're protecting yourself. But you don't
Right.
know it. I mean, you're
But you
seeing
don't
it.
know why you're protecting yourself.
Right. But until, like, thank God for these therapeutic processes that have gone on to kind of enlighten us a little bit so that we don't have to stay stuck. But,
Right.
you got to pay attention to the light.
Well, and that's why we know when people will come in, and most women come in and they're just, like, I can't find a partner, or I'm always single. I don't know what's going on. It's like, okay, well, let's look at that. And then we'll do a guided meditation, and like, when's the first time that you didn't feel worthy? It always comes down to a childhood situation. Always. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't feel worthy at age 4 because of this, or somebody left at this age and it made me feel this. And then once that is brought to light, then you can start doing the work,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, good point.
do you really want to wait till you're 40, 50, 60 and still having questions of like, why is my life not the way that I want it to be?
Yeah.
Well, let's heal that. Let's figure that
Or
out.
do you really want to get better? Do you really want to fix this?
Right.
Because
But
some people really get comfortable in the drama.
Exactly. And they identify with it. So then
Yeah.
it's like, well, if I don't have this story, who am I?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it might
It's like,
suck, but I know it.
yeah. Or like, let's get it fixed before we get to that point where our life is surrounded by that story. So
Yeah.
that we can identify with something different, something more healthy, something that's going to create a more healthy lifestyle for you and everybody else.
Yeah. I think two words that often come up in the process, too, that really have to be addressed are blame and shame.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, we like to blame and we like to shame. And we like to feel blame and we like to feel shameful. I mean, those are two very valid points and key words in our society. We like to blame others for our own problems, right? We don't ever want to take the blame ourselves. Like, it's never our fault, right? It's always somebody else's fault. In reality, it's always us. Or the shame, I guess when it comes to sexuality, like, maybe we've all felt this, or some people, like, you have sex and then you feel shameful. Like, what did I just do? Was that bad? Am I going to be burned at the stake? Is lightning going to come out of the skies and hit me now? There's the shame. But then also, that creates this dis-ease in the body, disease. The reason why we hold so much shame and guilt around sex is because we have a serious lack of education in this country.
Yeah, I was going to say, because we're taught to.
Yeah.
Because it's pounded into us since birth. That could be a reason why. I want to just go on blame for a second, right? Because my story is more drug abuse. That's been my major obstacle, and I find that my journey has taught me to kind of really appreciate and value and cherish time, because I wasted so much time. you know. So now that's why what you're talking about and other forms of enlightenment and you know, broader aspects towards life in general are more attractive now, because you just feel like, you know, it's always like when I would go into rehab, I always feel like, wow, I just blew like a year and a half of wasting, you know, getting high, or sometimes a lot more, but whatever it was, I'm going like, I got to get out of here, and I got to work 2 jobs, I got to get right into a relationship, I got to make up for all this lost time, and that is never the answer, right?
Right.
But just to understand that, just to be productive and just to be constructive, you know, to be open, you know, every moment you can, you know, and let it play. But, you know, for a guy that's always trying to will his way through things, that I was never able to grasp that. So that
Right.
stayed beyond me, right? But blame is such a fucking waste. It's such a colossal waste of time.
Yeah.
And it's not only blaming others. In my case, it's also blaming me. Like I would blame myself and punish myself. I mean, nobody, you know, gets high to the level because they love themselves. I mean, that's kind of self-inflicting, this stuff too. So that's another thing. And I think sexually too, picking bad partners and just that whole, you know, relationship thing, and a lot of it we do to ourselves. And you know, it's another way of blaming. They're really not deliberate, obvious ways of blaming ourselves. But when you say you're not worth it, who are you blaming? I mean, you know, aren't you really kind of blaming yourself? Everything that happens in life, somebody doesn't have to be blamed.
No.
Them or me. Anyone, the rest of the world or me. Sometimes just move on.
Yeah. And
But you got to do the work to be able to move on and not blame somebody. That takes work.
It takes work. It takes work. And, you know, a lot, when we start to do our work, we have to realize, you know, and this is where I got stuck too, is your life is 100% a reflection of you. You are responsible 100% for your life, all the good, all the bad.
Yep.
You know, and that's a hard one to come to grips with. So that's always step one, right? On the healing journey is like taking responsibility. And for some of the horrible shit that happens in our lives, like I don't want to take responsibility for why I got raped. I don't want to take responsibility for why I got burned. But those things happen.
But why? How are you responsible for things like that? I mean, there are cases where people are victimized.
Oh, there are cases. I'm definitely not going to say like because of what I was wearing is why I got raped. You know, like that one definitely came out of the blue, and that's a whole different topic. But you know, if 10 years down the line from now, I was in a relationship or a marriage where I was getting beaten, or, you know, I was stuck in a job that I hated and I didn't want to leave, I need to take responsibility for that, because it is my choice how I want to live my life.
I definitely agree with you. But how are you responsible for being victimized as a 3-year-old by a fire?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a hard one. Do
you accept responsibility for that? How could you?
At this point in my life, I kind of take responsibility because it's put me to be the person that I am today. So I look at it as a blessing in disguise, right?
No, that it happened to you, yes, but I mean, not that you had anything to do to bring it.
Oh, no, of course not. I think that it was designed so that I can be on this life path and be the person that I am.
Teach you a certain particular lesson, right? Yeah, I would agree with. But it's not where I just don't think there's. I guess I don't want to get caught up in like a semantical thing, but
yeah. And I just don't like the word blame. I feel like, you know, as humans we've kind of created that to not take responsibility and to just put it on something else or someone else. I just don't like the word blame. Like, what? Can we just get rid of that? Let's just.
Listen, it's funny, but I got punished so much as a kid. Like, go to your room, or you're not allowed this. You're deprived something. In school was the same thing. Like when I hear the word blame, I literally mentally go back to like a classroom. We're all sitting there, and somebody's got to say who did it. You know,
yeah.
And I mean something so minor, like somebody cracking a joke or something, and like the whole class is going to be held hostage till somebody admit. You know, and it's just like this is such fucking drama.
Yeah, and then think about that person that got blamed. How did they grow up? Always thinking that they were doing something wrong.
But you know what? Like, yeah. Listen, I could write 10 books on some stuff that affected people I know directly throughout their lives. That all is all a result of that kind of stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a lot older than you, so kids that were dyslexic, there was no term for that. You were stupid. That's what you were.
Which is
Stupid.
horrible. Oh my
Well,
God.
but when
Poor
now you don't
kids.
even realize there's an answer to that or an explanation
Right.
for why you can't read until you're 20 years old and it's already the 80s.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, but
Right.
that's your whole foundation is built on this inability to keep up with everybody.
Yep.
Nobody's coming up with an answer.
Nope.
Sit in the back with a dunce
We're
hat
trying.
on, or
We're trying. We're
you
trying
know.
to come up with answers.
Yeah, and listen, and we have, but back then there wasn't, and listen, I say this, I know a lot of people did the best they could do, with what they had too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean,
Absolutely.
let's not be them. We got a lot more to work with here. Let's work with it. Your approach is it's beautiful. Like your delivery.
Oh, thank you.
Like I often say with people, the content is really the most important thing. You have to have the content to bring to somebody to help them. But I almost parallel with that is the delivery of the content and how you can convey the message. It's so vital to other people receiving it. And you do it in such a mellow and a gentle way. I mean, you just talked about some like trauma, major shit that most people don't go through any one of these 4 things you just put out there. Right?
Right.
And you've had all of this and yet here you are in this place of calm, and it is obviously a result of the work. Clearly.
It's been a lot of work, Scott.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
But I just want to commend you for that. I think that is what is, you in your position are going to help so many people that are unreachable by somebody else with the same information you have.
Yeah.
It's a gift.
I mean, I hope so. And I know a lot more women and men in my industry that can be harsh and can be really blunt and then can be really soft. And I know what it's like to have trauma. I know what it's like to feel this big in a vast world, and so being gentle and being calm and being able to sit down with somebody and let them know that I love them and I have them and I'm going to sit with them during their muck and during their screaming, during their crying, and know that I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to blame them. I'm going to let them have their process and hold them through it so that they can find their bliss, so that they can come back to their humanness and be on this planet and live a life that's worth living, trauma-free, blame-free, story-free. Like, be in your bliss, enjoy pleasure, enjoy life to the fullest, and let's work through all of these stories and all of these layers that society has put on us, that life has put on us, so that we can just enjoy this ride while we have it.
You know what else I think that one point you haven't made is that you can't minimize the impact. Like when your personal approach, right, touches and reaches somebody who's been unreachable up to that point, that's so profound to them because the block is there and you're the key to unlock that door. They're going to be able to help somebody else, and that just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes, and in time,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's so. It's so vital. It really is.
There's enough pain on this planet. We see it every single day. So let's try to work through some of that pain in like a soft, gentle way, because we can't create any more pain on this planet. We just can't.
Now to be where sacred sexuality is your vehicle. That is, do you think, the catalyst in recovery from trauma?
I wouldn't say it's the catalyst, but I would say that through working through your trauma and your shadows and your stories, then, sexuality is much more enlivened and bigger in your picture. But sacred sexuality, there's a difference between sex and sacred sexuality.
Can you explain the
Sex
difference?
Is just like sex is just, like porn. There you go. There's sex. It's just like a wham, bam, thank you, man. That's that. Sacred sexuality is a lot more engaged. You know, when you're with a partner, there's breathing. You set an intention. Why are you coming together? You can use sex to create money. You can use sex to create your life. You know, why are you coming together? Set the intention. Light some candles. Do some eye gazing. Breathe together. Do a massage. Touch each other in erogenous zones. Honor each other. Bust out the strawberries and the chocolate. You know, like make it a whole. It's an awareness. You know, like you're taking the time and there's intention to it. And we all love sex. Sex is great too. Sacred sexuality is great, tantra is great, and sex is great. But it's all just about the intention, you know. And if you're just having sex to have sex without realizing the kind of energies that are being transferred, you know, when anybody merges, you're now sharing that person's story. You're taking on their emotions. You're taking on their energy body. So who do you want to take on? You know, that's a big thing too of choosing your partners. If there's this biker guy that's, you know, drinking all the time and doing drugs, but you find him really sexy and you just want to have sex with him. Okay, well, do you really want to take on that energy body? Like you want to take on all of his shadow? You want to take on all of that muck and anger that he probably has for one nice fling?
So you're saying if you engage in that scenario, that you're taking that energy with you when you leave that scenario?
Yeah. That's the thing that's what we don't teach with sex and what they do teach with sacred sexuality is that we're two energy bodies coming together, and those energy bodies are starting to mingle and commingle with each other. So it's like, who are you tying yourself to? Like, I don't want to be tied to just any random person. You know, I want to have intention. It's a very sacred, beautiful act that can awaken your entire body. It can open up your chakras and your energy centers. So it's really, sacred sexuality and sex is an act of enlightenment. It's when we don't talk about it or talk about the energies or talk about the things that are being transferred during that time, is when it becomes negative or stagnant or dis-ease in the body. Coming together in sacred sexuality is intentional. It's, you know, like when somebody intends to have a baby and they come together with their partner and they're like, today we're going to make a baby. That can be a level of sacred sexuality. There's an intent behind it. They're using that act to create something, and they're aware of it. There's an awareness. That's enlightenment.
I think, you know, from listening to you just describe that you have to have, your sexuality has to be a priority. It just can't be
Absolutely.
one compartment of your life. It has to be the priority so that it, you know, that it can be kept in the forefront and kept alive and kept vibrant.
Yeah, it's not just something people should just go out and have sex with whoever they want. I mean,
Well,
you
know,
can,
the reason
but
I say it is because the conditioning that most people have is that, you know, like that's not appropriate. Be all about your sexuality above so many other aspects of your life. I mean, that's just, you know, that I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I'm just saying that the conditioning is not that. And if you are that, then, you know, then you get all these labels, right?
which is so silly. It's not all about sexuality, but it is a part of us, you know? Like we go through life and we learn different parts of us, and then for some reason as a society, we just shut down sex. Well, guess what? Sex is a huge part of being a human.
No doubt about it.
Start talking about it. To start having a healthy relationship with our sexuality, because it's part of us. We're humans. Sex happens. Sex is always going to happen. Sexuality is real on a daily basis. You know, like, why do women put on so much makeup? Why do men do their hair? We want to look good, but at the end of the day, it's because we're sexual creatures and we're like wanting to be passionate. We're wanting to be beautiful. We're wanting to be all of these things that deal with sexuality. So instead of just throwing it off to the back gate and ignoring it and saying don't pay attention to it, and then causing all of these societal negative belief systems, let's just start talking about sex.
Well, listen, you even do it in an appropriate manner. Like the way you're even doing it, you're delivering it again. Like I said earlier, you're delivering the message, and I don't know how anyone could argue with this. And no matter how conditioned you are, except if it's just going to make you that uncomfortable. And if that's the case, then what are you going to do? Right? I mean, you're making perfect logical sense.
Yeah. Well, good. Great.
Yeah. And so, and what has it given you? What's the greatest thing that this approach and this change in your life has afforded you?
To be awakened to what reality in life really is, and to be able to live fully and freely in my own body without having any kind of shame or any kind of guilt. If I want to look beautiful and sensual in my body, I also don't feel that I'm going to go out and attract negative energy. Like I'm secure and strong in my body. I can go out there and look beautiful and feel alive and know that I'm not going to get negative energy that comes to me. It's made me aware, and it's honestly given me a really healthy fire underneath my butt, Scott, to change sex education in this country.
Yeah.
I have a deep passion to teach children about sexuality, and not just sex, but the sacredness of it, the energies of it, so they understand the energy that they can use. Come time of puberty, they're already aware of what that energy is, and they can either take that energy and put it towards their music, take that energy and put it towards their studies, take that energy and put it towards building something, creating something, instead of not knowing what that energy is and going and having underage teenage sex and having a baby at 14, when they could have taken that energy and been a world famous guitarist or something.
Yeah.
Like, let's really just open up the conversation for normalcy around sexuality. It's not a big deal. Why we've made it a big deal is beyond me. I don't know.
When you're talking to kids about stuff like this, it's really, it's a lot to throw on a kid's plate that, that is emotionally evolved in whatever age group you're talking about. Just to pick one randomly, let's say 12, right? So already there's going to be certain kids that might be able to grasp that, but there's going to be some that don't. Like, so how do you bring that kind of message of acceptance? That it's okay.
Yeah.
The kids who can be more cruel than kids?
Gosh, whew. Serious, right? Man, in my childhood, I was just so afraid to be an adult because, geez, children are mean. God, they can be so cruel, can't they? Well, I would say by the age of 12, in my perfect world, we've already been talking about sex for 4 years. So by the age of 12, they already have somewhat of an idea. And
is that the point where you go into that it's okay if you have different feelings than kids in your class, and that whole social element that just, yeah.
Absolutely, it's okay. And if you look at the younger generation right now, the younger generation is pansexual. There's more kids at the age of 5 that know that they are either heterosexual or homosexual, like they are just aware. And it really comes down to love. Do you love the person? Are you attracted to that person? It doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl. And it's okay if I'm a girl and attracted to a girl. It's okay if you're a boy and attracted to a boy. It's okay. And like, this is the proper way, and this is how you do it, and this is how you go about it, But again, by the age of 12, in my perfect world, we've already been talking about sexual energy, and we've already been talking about sex, that by 12, I hope that they would feel that their sexuality and their desires are normal, and it's okay.
Yeah, but there's still a generation of parents that we're talking about. Like, it's that
Absolutely.
Don't want their kids exposed to it. They're not. Listen, this is not a debatable issue either.
Yep.
No,
Yep.
We will not have it. We will not have it. And if you try to bring that in, you're going to be demonized and all of that. So, and I'm not making a case for or against. I'm just saying, how do you deal with stuff like that when you got so much coming up against you? Like,
well, the world's not perfect.
Yeah.
We're never going to be at peace. We have X amount of people on this planet that have different belief system of what peace even is. So to get everybody on board, it's never going to happen. You're always going to have that parent that doesn't sign the permission slip for their kid to go to sex ed. You're always going to have that parent that doesn't want to talk about it, which is also just a little mind-boggling to me, because really, find me one person who doesn't enjoy sex. That's what's always so trippy to me, is you'll have these really strong religious people saying, don't have sex, don't masturbate. But yet they had sex to create their children. Wasn't that enjoyable? Or like, were you in pain and despair the whole time that this gift was being brought to you? So there's so much, especially on the religious standpoint. I just don't understand. Like, we all do enjoy sex. So why are we saying don't do it and you demonize it? It doesn't make any sense. But I get it. I get it. Like, and your child is not my child. If you don't want to take the responsibility and talk to them about sex, then unfortunately they're going to be probably the people having underage sex or getting STDs or getting another child pregnant at the age of 12 or 13. And that's now on you. And that's fine. And that's fine. That was your choice.
Yeah.
Or, you can be a responsible human and a responsible parent and educate yourself and then properly educate your kids. It's just a lack of education. That's all it is. That's all any fear is. Any fear of anything.
Is it just education, or is it the intimacy of it all? It's like, it's a real intimate conversation to have with your kid when you start to have that. Like, and I think a lot of parents would prefer to just avoid that. Now, since I'm not a parent, I'm usually told to shut up and mind my business. You know what I mean? So I don't know if you're in that position, but yeah, it's hard to come back from that.
A lot of my friends send their kids to me for sex ed.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would think that would be a treat for some little 12-year-old boy.
Well, and girl, and I welcome it. Like, if you don't want to talk to your kids about sex, I will.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to make, I will. Somebody needs to.
Yeah, no, listen, and yeah, right, in the appropriate way, absolutely. I mean, it has, the information is important, but I think the intimacy of it is where, that you have to be evolved enough, and a lot of times people want to pass that off. There was a thing with athletes. One athlete goes, I'm not, don't make me the role model for your kid. Because I'm an athlete. It's not my responsibility to be the role model for your kid. You're the father. You should be the... Right. That's a bit... there was a big dispute about this years ago, and it never got enough attention that I felt. Because that's a valid point, man. Like, we want to put these people up on pedestals, and then when they fall off the pedestal, we can point at them. Meanwhile, it was our responsibility to take the job ourselves. That's the deal. But because a lot of this stuff, when it comes to sexuality, it's that awkward, that, the intimacy of it. And maybe am I wrong?
No, I mean, no, of course not. Because intimacy is different for each person too. So how do you convey that to another human?
And that the generation they have not had that experience where it was conveyed to them. So
right.
this is really awkward. But somewhere along the line, it's got to be done.
It's got to be done. It's got to be done. We can start talking about the act and the energy, and then we can start, in age appropriate. Like I said, we don't just pile it all on in a half hour during middle school one day. It's age appropriate. A repetition of information that just keeps building throughout time. By the time that you're in your late teens or your 20s and you understand what an intimate connection is, like, you have those butterfly feelings and you want to sit down and talk to John or Jody for hours and share your whole life story. Like, that's intimacy. And that's also just something that's natural, right? I don't know if we can even teach intimacy. We can maybe give ideas as to what intimacy looks like and like when you are feeling those feelings and emotions, but it's different for everybody. But absolutely, when you combine intimacy into the act of sex, there's the gap right there, right? Yeah. It's taboo because it's different for everybody. And how do you convey that to a child? I think that we start off with talking about energy first, talking about the act of sex, ways to have sex, safe ways of having sex, and then talk about the intimacy, and again, age appropriate and repetition with information building a long time.
Cassandra, I through my journey, I've been in so many places and been around women that have been so traumatized sexually, so devastated, where their self-worth, their self-esteem, their view, it's so complex. It's so complex that the whole viewpoint is skewed negatively. So,
and it probably affects other areas of their life.
I don't see how. Of course, I mean, most of the places I met them were in rehabs. So
Yeah. Okay, well, there, see?
there's an indication.
There you go.
Yeah. But in recovery in general, I mean, there's a lot of stuff there that's just so much to overcome. And then to get to a point, that you can actually like cherish who you are. And as a female, that's really vital. And you can go, instead of going through life with a chip on your shoulder or as a victim or with a resentment, that again, you wonder why people have cancer and, STDs that, like one of the things is stress,
Stress.
diet and
Ugh.
other things too, but stress. And when you're not doing the work to let this stuff go. Now, I wanted to ask you a question about, I mean, some people are wound so tight,
Hmm.
and then when you hear their stories, now you can understand. But, there's help out there. There is so much help out there, but it's just not always, the shame is so much greater than the help. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? The
Yeah.
shame prevents you from
True.
going anywhere near the help. You'd rather stay in the shame until you know
Yeah.
better. That's why a story like you is so vital for people to hear, because when they can see where you are, that brings hope to them.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's so
Absolutely.
necessary. Yeah. What do you think
Yeah.
about when that level of trauma and those blocks, like when you mentioned earlier, the chakra, the blocks throughout that have to be broken? And like, there was a girl I spoke to here who was like, horrific what was done to her as a little girl. I mean, as a little girl, beautiful girl too. I mean, it just, when you hear this, it's just brutal, brutal. And she went down to a tantra retreat and wound up staying there for a couple of years, and it just changed her life. I mean, but it almost like she went right at the root of where her pain was, because her pain was sexually provoked. So that's what she addressed, and now she's out there coaching and helping.
Yeah.
But to get that kind of courage, because she's still young, it's
Hmm.
amazing. Like sometimes when I see how far people can really come from really
Yeah.
depths of
Yeah.
despair, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, our light and our life's mission is where the pain is. It's like what happened to you. Where your trauma is where your light is. So the more you don't look at your trauma, the more darker life gets. Whereas you look at the root of your trauma, you look at the root of just the root of your trauma, that's where your light is. So congratulations to that beautiful soul that, suffered horrific sexual trauma and decided to go to the root of that. And that's probably correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably her life mission now.
As far as I know now, it is. Yeah, it's amazing though, because it makes me just think of the word recovery, and that's where I've spent so much of my life in recovery. But whatever you're recovering from, it's irrelevant. It's a matter of, you see so many people rise from these depths and actually live, fulfilling lives of
Yeah.
service to help other people. You know what I mean? And to say,
Hmm.
you know what, like, I get it. There's no
Hmm.
judgment coming from me. I understand. Let me
Yeah.
share. And then just when you can just convey the hope, that's so magical. It's so
Yeah.
magical.
Because there is hope. There's not one person out there that doesn't deserve to live a happy, healthy, blissful life. There's not. We all deserve that. It's just life that throws us curveballs and throws us circumstances. We're either going to work through it or we're not. And
Yep.
I know that I've also been in that point of I can't afford help,
Hmm.
or I don't even know where to go for help. Who's going to be
Right.
my right teacher? Who's going to be my right
Right.
practitioner?
Well, who can you trust
know?
with this kind of,
Who can
personal
you
information?
trust? Right. Like this is really big for me. If I'm going to
Yeah.
reveal my soul, can I trust you?
Yep.
I understand that. Those are really big, hard decisions to make and break through in order to get on the path of recovery.
Huge.
It's just like yoga. The hardest part of yoga is getting on your mat.
Hmm.
The hardest part of recovery is saying yes.
Yeah.
But I understand it. That's why I've been my own teacher. I was my own teacher and my own therapist for many years, seeking out different courses to take, getting different certifications, just to have my own healing journey. And then once I got to a point where like the hard stuff was dealt with, then I could start to find therapists and more teachers and go deeper with them. But I understand what it's like to not have money and not being able to
Yeah.
pay for a therapist, or I can't take this certification because I don't have $15,000, and like I'm never going to be healed because I can't afford it, or I'm never going to be healed because I'm too much and somebody doesn't want to listen to my too much.
Yeah.
I understand all of that. It's all valid. It's all real. It's all welcomed.
And it's also
And
all an
it's all-
excuse.
And it's all an excuse, but it's all accepted too. You know,
Yeah.
like I can help you work past the excuse. You want
Right.
to hold on to that excuse for the rest of your life, or do you want to wake up tomorrow and smile?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you practice, did you study and practice Tantra?
I did. Yeah, I have studied and practiced Tantra myself for 15 years. And then I've studied with a couple of teachers around the world. And I also just recently took a training to be a sex, love, and relationship coach underneath the Tantric Institute of Awakened Sexuality, which is by Miss Layla Martin, who is amazing, who had her own stories of sexual abuse and abandonment that has helped her rise to be the amazing entrepreneur and person that she is. So yeah, I've worked with couples, I've worked with men, I've worked with women, and I interweave a lot of those practices into my coaching as well. A lot of the breath work, a lot of the somatic touch, a lot of the visualization, a lot of screaming and yelling and breathing is all part of Tantra
Yeah.
and healing as well. So
Yeah. Did your journey begin with yoga? Did you start there?
where my journey began with herbalism, honestly.
Does that
And
mean
then-
smoking weed, or what is that?
No.
They say it's a
Valid
gateway.
question.
They do say it's a gateway drug. I'm just saying.
Sugar was my gateway drug, to be honest.
So is it mine. So same deal.
Yeah. Yep. It is the gateway drug, if people want to believe it or not. I would say, it was herbalism as a young child, and then it was yoga. Once I got on the mat, things really started to shift and change. I started to get into my body. And, like with my burns from being burned at a young age, I was in a full body cast for a year. I had to relearn how to walk and talk at 5. And so when I got on the mat, there was, getting into my body, being able to stretch my arm that has burn marks that I couldn't stretch my arm fully when I was younger, or my leg fully. And so I would say, yeah, the real journey started with yoga, and then it went to breath work, and then it went to Tantra, and then it went to, go for it.
Was Kundalini yoga introduced in there?
Kundalini yoga actually recently came into my life the past, I would say about 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah, and is more so now today than any other yoga. Kundalini yoga is amazing for healing. It's amazing in general, but just for the path of healing, Kundalini yoga is pretty top notch.
Have you experienced an awakening, like a Kundalini awakening?
I've had a Kundalini awakening.
Can
Absolutely.
you describe it?
I didn't realize what was going on when I was having it. It was later on where I was like, oh, that was a Kundalini awakening. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a lot of trembling up the spine. It was a lot of energy shooting from the base of my spine all the way up. My head was very tingly. I was seeing a lot of different lights and a lot of different colors. My whole body felt alive and vibrant. It was a little trippy and hallucinogenic also. But it was at a moment where I realized, it was like the awakening I needed to realize that I was now responsible for my healing, that nobody else was going to heal me. You know what I mean? Like, I could seek out people to help me with my healing or to open doors, but it was that moment where I didn't have anybody else to blame. I couldn't sit in my sadness and sorrow anymore.
That word keeps popping up, doesn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't sit in my sadness and sorrow anymore. Like, I was now responsible for my healing. And that moment changed my life. That happened when I was about 22.
And how long did that experience last? Was it approximately?
Moments. No, I mean, that specific jolt of energy and awakening, that moment lasted, I would say, maybe 10 minutes. But then after that, it was, I was awake. from there on, it was like, okay, this is up to me.
Was it the convincer?
The convincer.
Yeah.
I would say it was the convincer.
You would say
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, it's an interesting way of putting it. I've never heard that, but I would say it was like somebody came and knocked on my door, right? And was just like, hey, it's up to you now. You got to do this. It's your life, it's your body, it's your trauma. You're going to heal it because nobody else is going to do it for you.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I've heard people like, it's only the last like 3 or 4 years that I even heard the word Kundalini. To hear other people relate their experiences, no two are alike. I mean, they're kind of alike, and vaguely, but
Yeah.
no two are exact for sure. But they're so profound,
Yeah.
And I just came from that world where, like in recovery, I would always hear these terms when somebody would share something that happened, and maybe it was something ironic. They would go, "There are no coincidences." I'd be sitting there going, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
Right.
You know why? Because I don't know, something happens and then there's a song on the radio that kind of coincides. It's just like, come on, man. You're really reaching here. It's all a fucking coincidence.
It's all a coincidence.
Get over yourself. It's not like, but I was
It's all
from that
connected.
mindset. Like I would chop it down before I would acknowledge it, right? And then a couple of things started happening recently. I went to an energy activation.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I never did. So somebody invited me to an event that he was running, and I showed up at this event. I shared his story a lot because it was comical in a way, and me and my buddy laugh about it all the time. He was running the event, and I'm the only one that didn't show up in yoga attire, right? And it's 95% women, all these beautiful women with their yoga mats, and this guy comes over and he starts tapping them, just placing his hand on their forehead, and they literally like a wet noodle just drop to the mat, and they start like what I could describe it as just orgasming, like their bodies are just like flailing, and it's like I've only seen that happen in relation to one thing. So I really thought I was being punked, or like this was a candid camera episode or something. I'm thinking like, what's going on here, man? Like this is like one after the other, and he's walking around the room, and you got a room full of women doing this, and I'm just like, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
And it was profound in the sense that something's going on here. Mm-hmm. Right? Now he came over to me and he touched my forehead, and obviously nothing. So I just sat down, and but it was really enlightening in the sense that I witnessed energy happening. Like it didn't happen to me, but I also know that I'm not available. Right? So I can't deny what happened to you. I watched it. I'm like, something happened here. Nobody did. All these people didn't come here and pay this money to have this experience to fool me.
Right.
Yeah, right. That I know. And so something's happening with this energy. So that was kind of one of those convincers. Like there's something to this. Don't just, because I was going up to that point, I would say I would just, nah.
Well, and thank you actually for bringing that up, because I would say I had another Kundalini activation or awakening while having sex with a partner a couple of years ago. Somebody that I was intertwined with, in a partnership with, and we were in the act. We were having tantric sex, which means there's just a lot of breath work and intention throughout the sex. And I remember being on top of him and doing my breath work and doing my Kegels. And all of a sudden, this energy felt like it came in through my anus and went all the way up my back and shot out my head. And I was just like, it's convulsing, my eyes rolling in the back of my mind. And I wasn't having a sexual orgasm. It was quite different. It was a full Kundalini awakening through my body, And then after that, and then coming back into my body, it was just like, whoa. It was like time travel in a way. And that's something else that's undeniable. It was just...
It's so profound. I mean, like, how could you forget something like that? That's got to be like... I mean, I don't... How do only you can describe that, the magnitude of that.
It's like candy for adults. Like, give me more.
Candy? It's more like...
Even like your saliva starts to taste different. Like your saliva does start to have like a sweet taste to it when you are utilizing these tantric energies, or if you are lucky enough, or when you're lucky enough to have a kundalini awakening, like your juices taste different, your saliva tastes different, your vision starts to change, like just the way you look at life and literally how you see things just start to change. It's undeniable and for somebody who's witnessed women doing this, or just people doing it, it's undeniable. But what came first, kundalini or tantra? It's like chicken and the egg.
Oh, I don't think it matters, right? It matters is that you're available to whatever this magnificent energy is. That what comes first is we really don't have the control over it. And there's a lot of trust involved, and that you're just trusting in this process because you believe in it.
Yeah. Well, and it's also when there's blocks, you can't just, a kundalini awakening can't just happen for anybody. You can't leave McDonald's high on heroin and go and expect to have a kundalini awakening.
No, the heroin is mixed with the Big Mac. There'll be no energy activation. That's for sure. You throw a little Coke on there, I mean Coca-Cola, you're fucked.
I feel like that's like a gift when you do your work, when you say yes to healing yourself and trying to live this life of clarity and intention, and you're doing your yoga and you're doing your breath work, and you're eating healthy, and you're aware of, you have awareness of your surroundings, then those energies start to bubble up in your world.
Yeah, and it's obvious too that, like, when you just explained that experience there, that your partners engage with you too. So you're picking partners from a more select, advanced level that you are a part of, and
Absolutely.
So you're not in this, for lack of a better term, it's like a not woke. I don't know what the word is, but you just like it's limited. Ecstatic energy can only go so far because you don't have the ability to go further. You do.
Right.
And now when you're with somebody else that can, join you in that energy, hey, everything becomes more possible. The impossible becomes very possible.
Possible.
How do you convince people that that's even real? I mean, not that you have to, but when it's that profound, don't you feel a need to like people? I mean, I'm telling you, I've experienced this. You should maybe want to look at it. It might be worth your while.
Well, my selling point when I'm having conversations with people is, do you want to experience the 7-hour orgasm? Because I can also teach you how to have a 14-hour orgasm. Do you want to do?
We got to start at 7 first, though.
I mean, I know we all don't have time, right, for that, but that's absolutely possible. And if you look on my website, CassandraRoseHealing.com, the first thing that you see on there is the 7-hour orgasm. Yeah, I will teach you how to have a 7-hour orgasm. But guess what? Before you get to that 7-hour orgasm, there's a lot of work that you need to do. You can't just come off the streets and expect to have that. You can sign up for 10 sessions over 6 to 7 months. And then, you'll experience that if you do your work. But, like the 7 or 14-hour orgasm, that's set aside for people who are doing their work. The people who are really taking their life into their hands and choosing to heal whatever they need to heal so that they can be in life instead of be of life and live the life that you're supposed to live, that you were born to live, without all of the heavy weights and muck and stories.
Yeah.
So absolutely, this is available to everybody,
right?
But it's available to those who want to do their work.
Right, and we can't get lost on that either, because that is a requirement. You have to do this work, and a lot of I think often it's that hard to do. There's some pain that's really been pushed down for a lot of people for a long time, and and some will not, choose to take the road of they'll deal with it like, I'll stay in this because I figured out how to navigate within this space I'm in, and they just accept their lot in life.
And that's fine. I mean,
I'm
not going to push it on anybody else. That's one of my biggest things. I'm never going to push. I believe that whoever's supposed to work with me comes to me, or whoever you're supposed to work with, you will be drawn to. But you're right. There are some big pains in this world that people just don't want to look at it. So maybe they take a pill to quiet that thought, or maybe who knows, whatever. We all deal with grief and trauma in different ways.
Did you deal with a
But
lot of physical pain since your childhood from that fire incident? Have you had physical pain from that throughout your adult years
absolutely,
and your adult
absolutely,
years?
yeah, physical pain, emotional pain,
Yeah, but
mental
I'm
pain,
speaking just
spiritual
physical
pain,
pain. Do
physical pain.
you? Yeah, but
Yeah, like
obviously
I
the
said,
emotional pain. That's yeah.
like my burns, like right here. I don't know if you can see it, but
No, I mean
that was really tight. I have burns on my legs where I couldn't like stretch my legs out, and sometimes when it gets really cold, my burns tighten up, and it hurts to stretch my legs or to stretch my arms or to even stretch my body because I can feel like the skin pulling, or sometimes
yeah.
where I had surgery, I can feel the incision, like it all does come back, and then that jolts emotional pain or mental pain. But I've done my work, so now I know when like I'm stretching and it hurts, I do my breathing practices
You see, this is why I asked you that question because of the breathing now, and so you do this without pain medication,
without pain medication.
right?
I don't take anything. I'm 100% medications free. And like I said, I was on a morphine drip for 2 years, 3 to 5. Like there's just
Yeah.
I've healed myself from all of that, and that led to a healthy drug addiction later on in life too, and I've healed myself from all of that. I'm 100% plant-based. And the breath work, and then if there's anger that arises, or like I said, my best friend who I considered my sister just got murdered. And when I
So
found
sorry.
out about that trauma, I couldn't breathe. And just from my training, my body naturally went into breathe. Don't hold the trauma in. Like breathe, 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 breathe. Let it out. And I do my breath work every day. Every day. People who have had serious traumas, those
Yeah.
memories come up every day. You do your breath work every day. You don't need to take that pain pill. Do breath work. Breathe it out.
I would love to. We have to do this again. I want to spend the whole time just on that because
On breath work.
I know how important it is, and I know how so much can be done with that. How powerful it is,
And here's a key component right there too. A lot of people who have smokers, people who smoke tobacco or weed or whatever, our emotions are in our lungs. So people typically who have gone through a lot of grief or trauma or abuse, they're smokers of some kind. And that's why stopping cigarettes is really hard for a lot of people, because all of those emotions that you have smoked down now come up when you stop smoking.
and not only that, if you're saying the lungs are so valuable that way, you're resonating them. You're putting a coat of tar. That can't be
over
that.
the emotions.
Yes.
Hey, and then when you decide to stop smoking, all of those emotions come up, and that's my belief of why it's so hard for people to quit smoking, because now they have to deal with all of these emotions that they've masked for how many years. And then the breath work, and that's why breath work can bring up so much emotions. And that's why you have to do the breath work. Let the emotions out of the body. Don't let it stay in the body. Let it out. You don't have to remember the trauma. You don't have to relive the trauma.
Yeah.
All you have to do is breathe in specific ways to let it out of your body. Just let it out of your body, and then go from there.
And sometimes I've had it explained to me by somebody that the definition of anxiety is the inability to breathe properly, And I'm just like, I've never heard put in those terms, but when it's put in those terms, it makes breathing pretty freaking valuable.
Well, think about it. When you're anxious and you're, and then all of a sudden you're having a panic attack or an anxiety attack and you can't breathe and you seize up. Whereas if you just could take a deep breath, the anxiety subsides. But we clench and we seize.
Listen, when the adrenaline gets so high, like in sports or in something dangerous, when you're in a really, a high level situation where the adrenaline is just so high, the only thing that can help you there is slowing it down by breathing, like to focus better by breathing. Sometimes.
But we do the opposite.
Huh?
We do the opposite. We go, and we
Yeah, we're
stop
up
breathing.
there. Yeah, and yeah, you have to bring that down, and to function.
Yeah, it's like breathing and shaking. I'm a student of Peter Levine, who is a trauma specialist, somatic experiencing, and all of his work is around breath work and shaking for trauma. And when you look at nature, what do animals do when they're in stress or anxious or in fight or flight? They breathe and then they shake. We gotta do that whenever there's a moment of trauma or anxiety or stress. Instead of clenching it and holding it in, take a deep breath and then just shake it out. Just shake it out. We just hold, as humans, we hold everything in where we really should just be letting it out. Like go for a jog or get a massage or go to a sauna and sweat it out while you do some deep breath work. But don't let that shit stay in your cells, because
Yeah,
that's where the dis-ease comes from. And then we create maybe cancer because we have all of this stuff just locked into our body. If we could just release it, start over
yeah,
fresh.
yeah. Cassandra, I don't even. I mean, you are so. You have so much information. You're so well versed in all of this. You have a lot to offer so many people. I mean, we've touched on a couple of aspects here, and there's so much more. And there's so much more that we could go into on the aspects we covered, up to this point.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, unbelievable,
Mm.
unbelievable. For anybody that's watched this and would like the opportunity to work with you or to contact you, how would they do that?
CassandraRoseHealing.com.
That's your website.
Mm-hmm. Or they
Okay.
can just email me directly at
Email you there. Okay.
CassandraRoseHealing@gmail.com.
Right. And what about
Absolutely.
on social media? Can anybody follow you anywhere on social media?
You can follow me on Instagram. I keep my Facebook as a social platform for just me, not quite business. So
Good
you'll
for
get a lot
you.
of my you can be friends with me on there, but I'm a human too. So some days I'm gonna post things about me being pissed off.
It's all good. It's all good.
But
Yeah.
you're welcome to follow me on social media as well. Just know that I'm also a human and I'm not a human that hides. And so you're going to see me in my raw emotional state and open and honest. And then I'll definitely post some uplifting, fun loving things on there as well. But if you want us to follow me on social media, Instagram is the best, Cassandra Rose, Tantric Coach, or email me, CassandraRoseHealing@gmail, or find me on my website, CassandraRoseHealing.com.
Well,
Yeah.
listen, Cassandra, I can't really thank you enough. I mean, I wouldn't know where to begin to yeah, express my gratitude for everything that you have to offer people, and just the opportunity that I have to have some kind of platform to help you do that is
Thank you.
an unbelievable gift. So,
I'm grateful. Can I ask you a question?
sure.
What is EDS?
Oh, EDS. EDS is a syndrome called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome,
Okay.
and yeah, I have that up on the wall there because of a story. I'm doing a documentary on this syndrome. It's a connective tissue disorder that it's a result of not having enough collagen. It's passed on genetically through your DNA, and you're born with it, and they don't really have. It's really complex, and I'm learning as I go about this. But there's a little girl, a little Russian girl, an absolute doll, and she has this, and she has one of the most severe cases known, and she's just such a beautiful little kid, and she's fighting, and she's like such an inspiration, and it's unbelievable. And I met another family down in Maryland that I'm going to focus a story on this little girl Sophie and her mother Valerie and Kristen and Michael Means and their two sons and these two families, and how from other sides of the globe, and how they're dealing with the same syndrome. And
How
so courageous, so magnificent, these souls. I mean, I get goosebumps because it's it's such an honor to be exposed to this.
so what's a symptom of EDS of not
Well, there's a lot of
growing
symptoms,
connected?
and 90% of the people with this condition are either not diagnosed or misdiagnosed.
Okay, like Lyme.
It's a big long story, but it's a lot of hypermobility.
Okay.
You're like, this little girl has no stability in her joints, hips, knees, ankles, feet. shoulders, elbows, hands, wrists. It's, it's unbelievable what they have to go through. The amount of surgery, major surgeries. This woman in Maryland's had 30 surgeries in the last 10 years. I'm talking brain surgeries. Almost her entire spine is fused. And she wakes up every day, and she's a mom, and she's a wife, and she's, a woman, and, these kids. I mean, it's such an uplifting story against circumstances that are not going away.
Right.
There's medically, they don't know what to do. Like, they try to, get them through this moment and then get them through that. And it's unbelievable. But I happen to find these people, like by happenstance, this story. And these people, I don't know if I've ever met people with this much heart, this much compassion, this much, it's unbelievable. I came home one night, and it literally is like one of these experiences, like that you explained earlier, but not on like a sexual level. But I couldn't even sleep, and I was so drained and exhausted from driving to Baltimore and back, and I just was like, I couldn't wait to just go to bed, and I laid in bed for like till the next night. Yeah, I got up the next day, and I wasn't even tired. Like, something happened. I'm just so affected by this amount of, this is real. This is not, I'm not reading a story. I'm not watching a movie. I mean, I'm just down there visiting this family and going like, oh my God. And we talked, and we got deep from the get-go, from the first question. Like 5 hours we talked, and it just got deeper and deeper. And these kids and their ability to express, the truth and pain and their how they see things. It's like, wow. I'm watching it. I went over to Munich to spend time with the mother and daughter over there. It's unbelievable what this girl has to do by herself to get her daughter through everything. And her daughter is in a body cast from her both hip operations. So now it's been like about 3 months in a body cast.
Oh my goodness.
And she's 2. And,
and it's something that's going to be with her whole life.
The syndrome will be, and hopefully not. That's why we're doing this story here. We want to try to get it out there and see what we can do, man. Maybe raise some attention, raise some money, because these every one of these surgeries costs a lot of money. And there's a whole lot of stuff going on that way. And so the story's so complex. I mean, we're at the very beginning of it here, but yeah.
Well, thank you for raising awareness for this disease in general, and also for these families. I've never heard of EDS.
Nobody has. I've yet to mention it to somebody, and they go, "Oh yeah." Nobody. So don't. Right. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
So something else we all need to be looking at. Let's start paying attention to big things.
Well, you know what? This is why, and we'll talk afterwards. But this is why it's so profound what you do, because there's such a place for everybody in what they do, and that they take and they do it responsibly. It's and a lot of people think I'm nuts, and that for talking to so many people that are into this whole, use of sexual energy and sensual energy, and not understanding how important and valuable it is for men and women and people, and not, separating. It's people have to understand that there's a way to appreciate beautiful stuff and share instead of this conflict and this bullshit, which I'm guilty as charged. I revel in the nonsense that's meaningless, and it's just but at the same time, the more I pay attention to what you're saying and what other people say, the more enlightened I become, and the path, despite me, leads to a better place. So
well, and I just picked up on something that you said, so I just want to touch on it real quick. Thank you for sharing about the EDS, but when you said sacred sexuality and sexual energy is healing, it is. Sexual healing, sexual energy is the most powerful energy on this planet. It creates and it destroys, but it is actually healing. So when you are in touch with your sexual energy and you know how to move it throughout your body, you can have the flu and go into an awareness and enter into like a sacred sexuality partnership or relationship, basically have sex with your partner, but go into it with like, I'm going to heal the flu, and use your orgasm to heal your body. And instead of...
So you telling me if I learn this, if I was to learn, I could wait till flu season, and then I'd be running around, hey, listen, I can help you through this flu.
Now, I'm pretty sure that the government and the pharmaceutical companies are not going to like me saying this. However, yes, when you do your work and you know how to redirect your orgasm, you can take that energy and heal yourself. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's pain inside the body. Take that energy and heal your pain.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Does it take work? Yeah, it takes work. But is it worth it? Absolutely. Because then you can have a 7-hour orgasm and heal yourself. Come on.
Well, listen, I really, I don't want to hold you hostage here, but I want to
Okay.
thank you so much for your time. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
your information and the beautiful way you deliver it. And I definitely want to do this again. So
Awesome.
hopefully we will do that.
I'm open.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.